ladies and gentlemen, I have had the pleasure of traveling many places, but I want to tell you why in the world I went to Pakistan. And I went by myself because I wanted to know about immunization of children against polio. And I thought, you know what, if I don't get on the stick here, I'm going to miss the opportunity. Now that's thinking very positively for Rotary, wasn't it? But I was a governor in 13, 14, and they called us the first class, and we were supposed to be the first class where there would be no more polio after 2014. That's why we were called the first class of district governors. It didn't quite work out that way, and I will show you some of why. But I want to tell you that when I traveled to Pakistan, I first of all felt very safe. I was hosted by Rotarians. They took me around, showed me everything I needed to see, and I had the opportunity to give those precious drops to some children. But the gentleman here is Shahzad Ahmed is a very strong leader in the Lahore Garrison Club, and he was the one that actually put together a program for me. He puts together programs for Rotarians who travel to Pakistan. So if you're interested at all, you'll have my contact information. You certainly can ask me about getting in touch with Shahzad. But Shahzad is an amazing Rotarian. The reason I was inspired to go to Pakistan, though, is from this gentleman. And I met him at a zone institute, now called a summit, which of course recently happened in Fort Wayne, didn't it? Yeah. But I met this man. His name is Aziz Mehman. Aziz Mehman told a story. He is a Pakistani gentleman. He'd gone to a doctor's appointment. He was sitting in the waiting room, and there was a man with a very sick child in his arms. And he asked the gentleman, he said, "Sir, may I ask you what's wrong with your child?" And he said, "My child has just been diagnosed with polio." And Aziz said, "Oh, sir, I belong to an organization, and we are working to prevent polio, giving 2 precious drops to every child." And the man said, "Sir, how much money can I give you to cure my child?" And of course, Aziz said, "We don't cure. All we do is prevent." Well, at that time, then the man with his child was called in to see the doctor. And there was another man sitting there. And the man looked over at Aziz and he said, "It is the will of Allah when a child sickens and dies." Aziz Mehman looked at him in a minute. He said, "May I ask you a question, sir?" He said, "Sure." "Why does your child wear a sweater?" And the man said, "Well, he wears a sweater because it's cold outside. And if he doesn't wear a sweater, my child might become sick." And Aziz says, "Isn't it the will of Allah if a child sickens and dies?" A few minutes later, the man said, "Sir, I'd like to ask you if you would be willing to come and talk to some people that I know." And he said, and he said, "Polio, and about your drops, and about your organization." He said, "Sure, I'd love to. I want to know this. I want to share my information." He gave him a burner phone and said, "In 2 days' time, I will call this phone. And at a particular hour, if you will come and meet with my leaders, then answer the phone. If you will not, throw the phone away. You'll never hear from me again." 2 days later, the phone rings. Aziz answers it. He has prayed and thought about this. He said, "Yes, I will come." He was told the meeting would be after a long ride in an automobile, blindfolded, and he would be taken to a clandestine meeting. He was to say goodbye to his family. So Aziz kissed his wife and his children, got in the car, was blindfolded, and rode around. He was taken upstairs at the end of this long hour ride, and when the blindfold was removed, he realized he stood before a table of the Taliban leaders. They had come from Afghanistan into Pakistan so that they could meet with him. And he began to answer very, very serious questions. Why is it you want to immunize our children, and what are you really going to be doing? And are you going to be sterilizing our children? And why is it that you think that you have the right to do this? And who is Rotary? And why are you here? And is that not an American plot? Aziz answered all of those questions. And when it came to it, that is why, ladies and gentlemen, Muslims who are Afghan and Pakistani can immunize children against polio in those 2 countries, because of the courage of this gentleman. And that inspired me. I said, I want to go to Pakistan and see just what's going on. So I ended up with a personal invitation from Aziz Mehman to come to Pakistan, and so I did go. I will remind you that in 1985, this is our map of the red is where polio was endemic. This is where we stood in 1985. This is basically when Rotary stepped in and said, you know, we're going to eliminate polio in the Philippines. And when we were successful at that, that is when we began the idea of how about all the children of the world. At this time in history, 385,000 children were being infected every year. And that is a lot of kids who were becoming crippled and also dying from polio. And when you think about it, there are lots of things that we try to do, but when we can keep a person in a third world nation from being crippled, we're giving them the hope of a life. Because children who are crippled become the crawlers on the street, and they become non-entities in the society. And unless they can beg food every day, they are discarded humans. So in 1988, I became a Rotarian when Rotary invited women in 1989. So this is about when I entered the picture. And here we are in 2014. And if you remember, it used to be PAIN, which was Pakistan, Afghanistan, India, and Nigeria. And we always thought India was going to be the key. But you know, India's been polio-free now for years. So we've done extremely well, but we still lack Pakistan and Afghanistan. And like I spoke earlier, some of us from America are somewhat geographically challenged. So I like to always bring up the map of the world so you can see kind of where we are. But this is Pakistan, and it lies on the border with India, and it lies on the border with Afghanistan, also Iran. I haven't named a single friend of America, have I? You know, when we think about those people that we seem to continually have war with, but it's on the Arabian Sea. And this is Nepal and China. And so I just kind of bring up, where is Pakistan in the world? And that's where it is. So when we look at Pakistan, in March of 2019, we had only 6 cases in Pakistan. Fantastic, because in 18 we had 12 in the entire year. The problem is we have to go ahead and advance forward and look at, in August of 2019, we had 53 cases, and this has gone on up to being about 69. I may not be absolutely correct on that because I thought I had updated my slide. I apologize, but we're over 60 for sure this year. So why? What's happening? Well, if you remember your map, this is going to be the border of Pakistan with India, and this is the border with Afghanistan. And where do you see most of the small people, which represents those that have been infected? And these are the paralytic cases that have come up. Not all, every case, but those that show paralysis. There are 2 gates, 2 particular ways that there's a lot of movement of population from Pakistan into Afghanistan. One is called the Torkham Gate, and one is called the Friendship Gate. And again, if you look at this map, you will see that there's a lot of the cases that are coming. And that's because of being war-torn, economically challenged areas. There's a lot of movement of families looking for opportunities for not only for themselves, but for their families. They're trying to go to a better place, to a better life, to help their children be educated. And so these people are just seeking better for their kids, better for themselves, better for their families. And yet, this requires mobility. And again, the good news in Afghanistan was in 18 we had 21 cases, but here in 19 we only have 12. So we're winning in Afghanistan. The thing is that as we monitor what's going on, and this is a lot of words, but Pakistan put up this initiative to actually begin to immunize every child again. And I'm going to go over, why does it cost so much? Why are we immunizing children and it costs so much? We keep doing this, right? Why aren't we winning? Well, the point is that there are about 40 million kids that we are trying to immunize. But understand, if you miss one, there goes the virus. So we keep going back and re-immunizing and re-immunizing and re-immunizing. That's why the pinky thing is used. Have you ever wondered why we do that? For that 1 week, while immunization is going on, we know which children have been immunized, and we don't re-immunize. They don't have the yellow health cards that I had as a child, or I have for my children when they enter school, right? I have the government health card, and it says my child's been vaccinated for diphtheria, my child has received their polio vaccine, and all the things they should have, they don't have those things. Nor do they trust someone to provide them with a card like that, okay? There's no trust of the government. You have to realize we're talking about a completely different society. Our paradigm does not work there. So, you can't just presume everyone's received their vaccination or their immunization, and now we can just move on. And so when I was in Afghanistan, I actually had to take the bottle and give the precious drops to the children. And I have to say, if anyone's ever described that to you, it is exactly that feeling of, I've done something good in this world. Maybe not a big thing, but it's something. And it felt so wonderful. I will tell you, it's not so easy to drop those drips. You have to kind of manage the thing. I thought, oh, I'm handy, I'm a dentist, I can do anything. Well, it took a few times to make sure that the 2 drops got into that squirming infant's mouth, so it worked out just fine. But the problems become, why are we not just through? Why not? Well, we have chronically missed children. Some of this is because they just physically aren't there. They were off in another room. They didn't come to the fair. They didn't get the drops. Or a parent is holding their child back. And this is also the problem of propaganda. But the other thing is just population movement. Okay, we were in the village of Lahore today. That child wasn't there today, but they've just moved there over the nighttime. So again, we have these people that are moving around. All the kids are moving. And so, one of the things that we are doing, and this is amazing because this is part of the extra that we get from our polio initiative with Rotary, is the fact that we are monitoring sewage systems. We are monitoring water systems. We are monitoring what it is the children are being exposed to. And that is indeed why Ebola was stopped. When that Ebola breakout began, CDC, World Health Organization, accessed Rotary and said, we've got to go in there and test for Ebola. So we have the infrastructure set up for many other diseases, not just polio. But polio, of course, is our main focus as Rotarians. So, but what we're finding is actually the sensitivity is becoming greater, which is good because now we can combat what we know. You only can fix what you know. And what we're looking at is this. Now, someone asked me at one of my talks, well, why don't we just go in and sterilize their water? Why don't they boil their water? Why do the children drink from the water that's on the street or in the sewage canal or whatever? They don't live like that. You know, they don't have bottled water to walk around with, or if they did, they probably filled it from that very same sewage lagoon, okay? And it's a problem in the fact that we just don't have the water and sanitation that we would normally see. The other thing is, where is our reservoir for the virus? Viruses live in warm, wet society, okay? So you and I are carriers. We don't carry polio, hopefully, but we are. We are the reservoir. And we're talking about the adults. So there's a new initiative now in Pakistan to go ahead and immunize all adults. Now this would help to make sure that the reservoir of polio virus can also be, dealt with. But what goes on when we immunize a child? First of all, let me talk about mobility. When we were in Karachi, which is on the Arabian Sea, and that is the political capital of Pakistan, then actually we have workers. These are Pakistani employees of the Pakistani government, and they actually are the ones that go on. They're given a stipend for providing the immunization for the children, and they go on board the trains. They literally walk up and down the aisle and look for every child below the age of 5. Do you know how they identify a child below the age of 5? From their teeth. Yeah, exactly. Because most children get their permanent teeth at the age of 6. So if they've got these teeth prominently displayed, they're generally not going to do it. But any kid, now there's a range of when kids grow teeth in, so we might be missing a few. But that's basically it. You watch it and you get them to smile at you. And that's how you know who's who. But anyway, so these young people, young men and women, go on board the trains and they actually provide the drops. And that's what happens in Karachi. One of the things that we did with my Rotarian host is we went around with this easel. And everywhere we stopped, and of course here I am, the only, at the time, blonde-haired lady, and I was the only blonde in the whole group, so they thought I must be a Western rock star or something, They thought I was a movie star, which was fun. But anyway, so they'd get our picture made. Well, then we had people just hoarding around us. Well, we are also providing within Polio Now, and this is something that's being taught and taught. And we also gave out pencils to the children, and again, they were willing to come up and say hello to some blonde lady from America anyway. We did go to one of the schools, and these are the students in this welfare school. This is strictly by private funds. It was begun by a Rotarian's wife, believe it or not. She realized that children were outside the gates of her home. She lives in a palace. It's absolutely fantastic. Marble everywhere, and everything is draped in these beautiful fabrics. And outside her gate, she realized children played every day. And she asked one of her staff members, "Who are those children?" They said, "Well, they're our children." "Why are they not in school?" And they said, "We can't afford to send them to school." She said, "Bring me your children, and I will teach them." Then she asked all of her neighbors to send all of the children that were outside their gates as well. And she began this welfare school system, which is in the slums of Karachi. And that is how this school system began. So anyway, so these are the young women, and the woman in the blue, she is the star academician. And the Rotary Club of Lahore Garrison will make sure that she goes to college and she gets every bit of the education that she desires. So it's incredible. They also teach them how to sew, use computers and everything. Now that's just the girls' side. They also have a boys' side. So we have a men's school. When the children reach about 8 years of age, they divide them into sex. So then you've got your girls' school and your boys' school. I don't think they have a recognition of non-sex. I just don't think that's happened there yet. So I'm just saying, don't know. So when we give the immunizing drops, what are we doing? We're giving the children a weakened form of the virus. It's called attenuated. And that virus is not able to cause paralysis, but it initiates an immune response in the child's body. So the child's body, they ingest it through the GI, but it goes into the bloodstream. Once it hits the bloodstream, the child develops an immunity. That means they build up the antibodies within their own body. And that attacks it and is excreted. The thing is that when they excrete that form of the virus which has been attacked, they are actually excreting more live virus, okay? Again, it's the attenuated form. But once that virus enters the child's bloodstream, it may mutate. Once it's excreted from their body, it may mutate, and it tends to go back towards the paralytic form. Have I made sense? So even though we've given it to this child to protect this child, during that 6 to 8 weeks that they are developing that immunity, they actually are infectious to others with some form of polio. Now, I had this real question about this is the vaccine-derived poliovirus. And if you've read anything in any of the numbers that Rotary gives out to us so that we can keep up with what's going on with this war against polio, is the fact we're looking at this circulating vaccine-derived poliovirus. And I thought, what in the world is that? Well, if that child excretes poliovirus and it has mutated, and it mutates more, and that population in which the child lives is under-immunized, it has a ripe field in which to grow back to be a paralytic form. It's not the wild poliovirus, though. Understand, it's a different virus. That's why we call it vaccine-derived. Until we have defeated the wild poliovirus in Afghanistan and Pakistan, we can't quit immunizing. So we have actually introduced a new form of the disease. Does that make sense to you? And unfortunately, oh, good, I'm glad that's not my phone. Until we get rid of having to immunize these children, we are going to continue to have this problem. And this is the problem we have in Nigeria, okay? This is predominantly showing up in Nigeria, not so much where we're actually doing the wild polio. So, I wanted to show you that this is the problem. And these numbers are not exactly correct either. I'm sorry, I didn't get to my slides to update them. But if you notice, Nigeria, we've had 15 cases. In the Central African Republic of Democratic Republic of the Congo, we've had 17. These are paralytic cases from the circulating polio vaccine-derived virus. So understand it can go back and cause paralysis. So we've got this still. But the one that worries me the most is look across the Indian Ocean. We've had a case or two, and actually this is up to 6 in Myanmar, and we've actually had one case show up in China. The good news is that we are continuing as an organization, as the World Health Organization, as the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, to immunize many of these countries. So in many of these countries, the population is still immunized to a certain level, so it's not just going to explode. But when I was in Pakistan, I attended their district conference. It was fantastic. Oh, let me tell you, there were thousands of people there. It was amazingly well, and unfortunately we in America, we just don't get thousands to our district conferences, do we? But we're good with who we have, because we've got that quality right here in this room, okay? But nevertheless, there were thousands of people, and I got to listen to this gentleman, and he's actually from the UK, and he was talking about how polio virus is fighting for its very existence as a species on the globe. I never thought about it that way. The harder we attack it, the more narrow we make its living field, the stronger its defenses become. And it's rather like the last guys that stood in Alamo, okay? They're just doing the best they can to maintain themselves as a species on the face of our earth. And we are working to annihilate them. So we have to realize that that is really where the fight continues. These guys are on the front line. This is the Rotary Club of Lahore Garrison, and I'm going to tell you, they actually changed their meeting time from Wednesday to the Monday that I was in town just so that I could be there. I was so impressed with that. I thought, oh my goodness, I never thought I had that kind of clout. So anyway, and here I am, the only blonde lady in the whole room, and here I am right in the center. But nevertheless, these guys are on the front line. These are guys that are going out and doing the propaganda, making sure that people hear positive things. They're going out and teaching. They also are the ones that are members of the Pakistan country, so they are providing the money through their taxes and through their contributions through Rotary to make sure that we have those who go out and give the vaccination or the immunizations. We here in America have opportunity as well to join in this war, and it's mostly through our Paul Harris Fellow giving. As you know, when you give a Paul Harris Fellow, it's $1,000 through the foundation, and it can go into two ways. You can either mark it share, and when you do, some of the money goes to end polio now, okay, as well as going to the general fund and all the other things that it breaks down to. But you can also send it all to end polio now. And when you do, regardless of which way it goes, the money that's given to polio is matched 2-to-1 by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. I have just learned that actually it was Melinda Gates who had an aunt who had contracted polio as a child. And that's kind of where her relationship, but also their knowledge of the fact that Rotary stands behind what we say we're going to do. That's why we have such a great relationship with them. But anyway, that kind of gives you an update and why it is we must continue. Because when we go out to immunize, we can't just immunize that one child that maybe missed it. You know, all the rest of you got it, but you didn't, right? I don't know that. You don't know that. And even on the train, if you ask a parent, did your child receive these drops? They're kind of the dissociated part of society at that point. They're coming from a far district. How are they going to answer someone in authority? Are they going to say yes or are they going to say no? Depends on how you ask the question, isn't it? If I stand before you in a uniform and I said, did you do X? You might say, well, no, I never would. And yet your child may receive the immunization. Does that make sense to you? The fact that we don't really have that sort of understanding. Yes?
With the image of America in that part of the world, it's got to be very difficult to get through to the common people saying, what's your motive, Americans? What are you trying to do? And how are we getting through that image and changing that image so that it is, hey, we're trying to help you as well as the rest of the people in the world? How are we getting through that image?
Exactly. And really, it has to come from the fact that we can't claim it as Americans, okay? It has to come through. And let me also say, though we tend to lump Pakistan and Afghanistan together, they're not the same. Many Pakistani people were educated in America. Shahzad came to Iowa State University. I mean, that's where he received his college education. Many Pakistan families have young people here in America receiving their education. So our relationship with Pakistan is not as adversarial, nor do they think as negatively on the whole. Now, it's hard to generalize everything, but we have a better relationship with many of our people who are from Pakistan than we do most of the people from Afghanistan. Okay, it's a different country, and they think differently and they perceive us differently. That is why the Taliban said, you can send Afghan Rotarians, of which there are not a whole lot, but you can send them out, and we will allow them to immunize our children. Okay, so you're right though. It's a problem with the propaganda, and they are not our. We would love to be friends with them, but they don't perceive us with trust. Like Telly talked about, trust is something we earn.
One thing we found this summer in Norway, that the Norwegians don't understand America because they're all watching CNN. They have one side of the view. They do not understand. And I imagine that this is worldwide almost, that they're looking at CNN as being truth, and it's limited truth.
Personally, I'll tell you, I don't watch media because I don't like the way they tell me the facts, and then they tell me more what I would think about those facts. We don't have factual stuff anymore now. That's just a personal opinion. But I'm desperately discouraged by that because I know what the world sees. And that's not who I am, and that's not who you are. So, yes.
I have two questions.
Yes.
What year was it that meeting with the Taliban took place? And how long has it been since a vaccine provider has been killed? I haven't heard about it in a while.
There was a vaccine provider killed in 2018. I was there in 2017. The Taliban, though the meeting with Aziz Mimon, as I understand, had just happened the year before. So since I saw him in like October, around zone time, September, October, I think it was the previous, like 16 is when he went to that meeting. So it's all relatively new and fresh, though obviously this is 19, I mean years fly by, don't they? But so, but yes, there were some workers that were killed soon after I had come home from Pakistan, because again, it was very much on my mind and I was listening to the news. But nobody lately. And again, I think because locals are going, it'd be like you in your church, and then you come up with something that your children of your church need. I would tend to listen to you if we belong to the same church versus someone who's from the outside who comes down, to lay some government on us, But yes.
The re-immunizing them. So if you're giving them the vaccine that has it in it, can you overgive? I mean, can you give too much?
That has been researched, and actually the answer to date is no. There's been no documented anything that was wrong. Matter of fact, one of the leaders of a remote village, to prove to his village it would be just fine, took a whole vial of this stuff, not these little drops with it, and drank the whole thing, and he showed it had no ill effect on him. Now, whether or not that would be a true test or not, we could all argue that point. But for the villagers, it was enough that they weren't just giving it to their children like a Jonestown thing, okay? I mean, he was taking it himself, and they could watch him, and he was fine. So there's been no negative to that. And so now, even the girls in that school said, when Shahzad asked them, and this surprised me, they said, yes, every child, every time. So anytime the immunizers came around, every child, every time. Yes.
I read somewhere, which is probably the Rotary magazine, but I read somewhere that in those areas, they actually have to immunize the children like 8 times in order for it to be effective.
Sometimes, and a part of that is the cold chain, because this immunization has to be kept at a particular temperature, and if it falls and it gets warmer than that, it's not viable. So we're not doing anything with it. So we have to be very careful. That's why they carry those cold packs, because it's 99 degrees in Karachi on any given day, okay? So they have to make sure they keep it cool. But if there's just the slightest glitch, I mean, what does it take to melt ice cream at your house? Not much, right? You just take it out and there it is. So similarly, that's it. So that's why we're not trusting that one dose either. They just don't have the refrigeration and the means to do that.
I wondered, since they stain the pinkies purple, if they're going back, what do they do? Or if somebody's got a stained pinky, but they keep re-immunizing them, how
They don't do that if they can see the child's pinky, okay? So let's say you have a World Immunization Day, this is common. Then after, the day after, there'll be teams and they go door to door to door to door. They knock on the door and ask to see all the children of the house. There may be one child that wasn't immunized, but see, the next day, all the children that were still have that pinky. So the pinky lasts about 7 days. It's like ink on your skin, you know. You draw something or write a number. Not that my husband ever writes phone numbers on his hand, but you know, they're generally there for a day or two. You know, that's about it. So that's it. And again, we're not talking about a lot of hygiene. So these kids aren't only being washed every day for the most part.
I'm ignorant on some of these things, but
Sure.
do the adults typically not get polio?
Not typically, and that's because generally they have received some sort of immunization just through their life. And again, I'm not talking about receiving drops. I'm saying just by ingesting, they've developed their own immunity.
Okay.
Not every time is a person exposed to polio are they going to become paralyzed.
Right.
But the fact that they might is just so scary for children. So, but no, but actually that's why we're attacking that next. Like I said, now we're going back, at least in these areas where we still have the wild polio virus being endemic. We are working with the adults because we realize that it's got to live within us. I mean, they're not going to get this from hedgehogs, okay? It's not going to come from mosquitoes. It comes from people to people, and mostly it's either through some sort of wet excretion that we make is what it goes. It goes into the water system, whether it's groundwater or whatever, and that's mostly what the children are drinking. So, yes.
Strange question.
Okay.
What percent of American USA children under the age 5 have not been immunized?
Go to California, and I think you find it's a reasonably high percentage, and that's very scary. Very scary because this virus travels on the next airplane to San Francisco. And I think it's very foolish. You know, I always tell people, what would you do if you could prevent, like the sweater? Why not prevent that? But again, people are making decisions based on internet information and things that have no value as far as, you know, being scientific. And I think they're making very poor choices. If you come to Mississippi, I think you think that's very, very small. There's a very, very small percentage of children that may not have been immunized, but it's not going to be much. Because we still believe in the government, and we still believe that there are things we should do to up our own selves and our own society. But you're right. I mean, it becomes a societal question, not an individual question. I don't think that's a foolish question at all. That's just that's a real question, and more every day.
And Dr. Rose is speaking, I'm not sure of time, but she's speaking on immunization.
Okay. Yeah.
Dr. Rosa.
Was there another question? Did you have any question? I'm sorry, I didn't see anything. Any other questions for me? So, well, that's what I've taught you about. I hope you now know what circulating polio vaccine-derived virus is. So at least you know that.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. You're welcome.